Okay, we're actually starting the recording now. So once again, welcome everybody. Welcome to
Welcome.
webinar number 10. Today's topic, we're actually going to go how to enter custom icons into your Central Station 3 and 3 Plus. So let's give a couple more minutes maybe
Yeah.
for people to join in. Have we had any software updates lately?
To the CS2, there was.
CS2 has an update that I think mainly affects the mobile station too.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. I expect a update for the Central Station 3 to have the same capabilities with the mobile station. Um, there's been talk about people think they can run multiple units now with the updated mobile station, where that is that is true, but you can't set them up on the mobile station. You are able to run multiple units that are set in the central station with the mobile station now. Now I'm not sure if that works with the Central Station 3 or not, because I updated my mobile station with my Central Station 2 and then plugged it into my Central Station 3, and it wanted to downgrade it back to the last version. So um, hang tight. I'm sure there will be one soon for the CS3, the mobile station. 2.12 is the current.
So just something to
2.12?
be aware of.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shall we begin?
Yes, yes. I think
All right.
Curtis is going to start. We're going to start fresh with, let's say, a raw picture that you take of your own locomotive or train car that's digital, and go through the process of getting into the Central Station 3.
Yeah. First, we will discuss file sizing, um, proper formatting for the image you need to load into the CS3, and how to get it connected. So let's start out. Now we're basically quick screen share. So part of this is really going to address this screen when you see it on your CS3. The question marks, it just means basically you haven't assigned or you haven't picked a icon image for that locomotive. Rick will cover some of this. Basically, I'm going to show you how we can go from uh, say taking an image of your locomotive using like your phone camera. And let's change screens here.
Yeah, basically, we want to do this because a lot of people ask us if new icons are coming out, and not every paint scheme is available in an icon from Marklin as an update. So Curtis and I years ago started photographing our own locomotives to do this.
Okay, so first of all, let's kind of show. These are various images that I've set up for you guys to look at. Let's kind of go through one at a time here. Actually, excuse me, I kind of didn't have to do it this way. So let me go back to this screen here. So you should see this screen. Oh, you know what? This isn't the regular viewer.
Yeah.
Uh, sorry, folks. New share. Let me.
Geez, what are we, like 2 minutes into it?
Yeah, already full of failures of explanations, right?
Yes.
All right, let's see if I can open up. Okay, so this basically is the image that I took with my phone.
No, you're still sharing
I'm not
the
sharing the right screen.
TV.
Thanks. Yeah, I knew we were going to have that
Two,
problem.
2.5 minutes in.
Enough of that wise guy. So this is, you can see the image now, right? So this is the image I took of the locomotive. Um, and what you're basically going to do is once you have this locomotive image in your phone, you want to send it to yourself so you can maybe set it up for a good file size format. Now, the images that you want to load into the Central Station 3 have basically dimensions and they're known as pixels. and the image across here. Let's see if I can pull up an info. Can you see the file info window here?
Yes.
Okay, so the dimensions on this image, just basically native from my camera. You can see it's this over here in the lower, over on the left. It says my dimensions are 1,910 pixels by 1,432 pixels. You can load this into your Central Station 3, but your file size is actually going to be pretty heavy. And you can see that the size of this image is 1.9 megabits. That's right above here. The target window that you want to do is you actually want your dimensions to be 384 pixels across rather than 1910 here, and 144 pixels up and down. Over here we got 1432, so that's really sizable. Ideal file sizes are going to be more in tune of, especially what we're showing here, are going to be more in tune to about 1 kilobyte. No, is that correct? No, it's going to be close to 100 kilobytes, not 1.9 megabits or 25. Most of the icons you'll see in the Central Station 3 are around 20, 25 kilobytes. So you can see that the file size is really small. Part of the reason you don't want to have a huge file size is basically you're going to be sucking out memory on your Central Station 3. So if we look at this image, and I'll scroll through the images, when you email an image to yourself, it depends on how you email it. If you go directly to Google, you're not going to see this message window that I'm displaying here. I've emailed it to my custom email address, and it gives me an actual choice of how big that image is that I'm sending it to. And this sometimes it gets really kind of interesting because we'll get pictures from our users and the screens are so big that we can't see the entire picture on one screen. We have to scroll left and right. So you can see over here that you can actually sort of choose which size you want to send to yourself as viewable. Obviously, if you go smaller, it's a smaller image for review or seeing it. And frankly, we did a test on this, and transferring a small size image was actually smaller than the image that you can use in the Central Station 3, which I said the dimensions were 384 pixels by 144 pixels. Medium is actually a good size because it will reduce the size for you. You can go large, and it basically eventually will get edited out or reduced in size, and we'll get to that in a second. Just to show you comparison, and hopefully it scales right in the application. This was I believe it's the full size image that I sent. This is the medium size that was sent, and then this was the small option. So let's see if I'm not zoomed in or anything. So this is the actual size of the image that you receive to edit. Okay, so that's basically the file sizes, and hopefully you guys followed that along. Rick, just interrupt me if there are any questions.
No, not yet. Don't forget to tell them they got to straighten the image on their phone first.
Yeah, so there are some cases where, if you can see, maybe I have a horizontal line where the track is, you might take your picture crooked. In other words, the wheels on the right might be higher or lower. Well, you can rotate it in some software, and I'm just going to explain free software that you got on your computer. And by the way, I am on a PC. I don't have information on the Mac basic image programs. If you're sort of a high-end user and you have purchased editing software, you can rotate these images to sort of smaller degrees, but this one will only rotate at 90 degrees. So if you can, when you take the pictures, make sure your horizontal lines are horizontal, and that would make at least an easier image to look at, unless you really want to be creative and do a perspective view. And neither Rick nor I will try to stop you. It's
No. And also you can, on my phone, the iPhone, you can rotate by degrees to straighten it out before you send it to your computer.
Yes, that is true. So you can do that as well. Okay, so next we will go into the image editing software. Let me close that out. And let me load up. Oh, and so by the way, just kind of looking at the window, and let me share this window here. Share. Okay, so we're going to look at the 4 images, basically the details of the image. So the small image format that I sent to myself, it has a native resolution of 21 kilobytes. That's the KB, that's the column on the right. And again, it's probably what we're going to end up saving is going to be closer to 100. So what happens is if we rescale this, then you're trying to get extra data into the image that is not available. Large is going to be sort of oversized for your kill. And again, these two file sizes, 19 and 545 kilobytes, you're just kind of wasting memory space to use that as an icon in your Central Station 3. That's why we're going through this process, so you can pre-process your icons before you actually load them into your Central Station. So let me just kind of take, and I'll kind of show you sort of the results of how we do this, but we'll take the medium format image first, and I'm going to edit in 3D or Paint 3D. That's the software that I'm using, and I'll change to the software now here. Okay. So this is the image here. 2 things that you can do is you want to, first of all, you want to sort of crop, and cropping means just sort of re-squaring or getting out excess data that you don't need. So in this sense, you really don't need to see all the sort of foam background that I have in there. And then sometimes we like it as clean as we want, so we'll just kind of crop out to the rail points. And so your icon basically is just going to basically look like this. That's your representation. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to click under a, in this case it's canvas options, but what you're looking for is you're looking for the window that's going to give you the width and the height dimensions of the actual image. And once again, the image target that we're looking for is, we really don't want it larger than 384 pixels width. That's this one's 640 px pixels and 144 pixels high. So we basically we're going to reduce this 640 to 384, and it's going to, if we set up our settings here correctly, it will rescale the height for us. So one, we want to lock aspect ratio, and what that means is if we do not lock the aspect ratio, we could get a scrunched locomotive, or it's going to, it's going to look tall, sort of like one of those carnival mirrors where it's all distorted out of shape. We do not want to do that. We're going to resize the image with the canvas, and basically your picture is the canvas, and we want to make sure it resizes uniformly. So I'm actually going to select this option. And, when you're doing this, play around with it, check your settings, and then you can go ahead and change the number. So now I'm going to change the 640, and I'm going to put in my maximum number, which is 384. And then when I hit the enter key, you'll see that the height figure here is going to change, and it changed to 88. And over here is the resultant icon. So now what I'm going to do is, now it's just basically ready, unless you want to do any more of it. But this is the basic, and I'm actually going to save this image out. And since I use the medium format image, I'm going to actually say medium format.
No, we like to save our image names as Marklin item numbers.
Yeah, it's easier. Yeah, let me get back to that in a sec. Just for comparison's sake, I want to be sure that you guys can follow along with what's actually been happening to the images. So this is the medium format image, and it's cropped, just so you know that it's the difference between the edited version and the raw version that I have up here. So I'm going to save that. And actually, I'm going to do the same thing. And just for comparison's sake, I'm going to actually do that with the, I don't need to save it because I've already saved a version of it. I'm going to do that with the large format image. That's the one that's 545 kilobytes. You know what? Why don't I do the full format? So that's the large one. I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to crop the image again, so get rid of all the unnecessary bits that I really don't need to see in the icon, right? Hit the enter key, and that saves it down to the crop. And look at my file size here again. See, it's 1910, and this time it's 431. So again, I've got my two lock aspect ratio and resize image with the canvas set, and I'm going to drop this down to 384. And hitting enter, it's going to change the height number again to 87. Just, it's a little bit of variance with the other one, but that's okay. It's not going to matter. And let me save this out. Whoops. Let's not do that. Got to hit the right menu option. So save out as an image. And this is going to be the large format cropped. Now, as Rick mentioned, and we can kind of show you this, when you open up like the library of images, they list all your locomotives by the type or class of locomotive. When you're doing custom icons, that can get tedious trying to search for icons or pictures, and you'll see that when Rick does his portion of the demonstration. But what ends up happening is it's just easier to search for the box number, and you can find an icon right away if you know what your box is. Basically, you got to understand your own collection. So let me go back to this window. This is now, we're going to see the resultant file images. So this window here, you can see now. So the original medium format image was 74 kilobytes. I've cropped it down, and it's now just 13 kilobytes. And that's the size we need for the system. The full format, which was this one, it was actually 19 kilobytes. I cropped it down, and that is now 14 kilobytes. So now you can use either one of these resolutions when you send it to you, but when you do sort of rescale it, it's going to scale it down to a good size. And this is the cropped image, the full image cropped. And that's the icon that we'll be using in the Central Station 3, at least my portion of the demonstration.
It's the wrong
Oh, sorry.
format. It's got to be PNG.
Yeah. Let me show you. Oh yeah. I do have an error here. Yes, thanks for correcting that. So, let me just show you the image. Okay, and I'll show you what error I did create. So let's see if I can go back to the edit window. Full paint 3D. Okay, so the one thing that I forgot to mention or didn't mention here is that when I do save it out, I need to actually save it out as a different file type. And you see down here on the list, it says save as type. There's a pull down menu. I'll click on it, open and close. And I saved it as a JPEG, a JPEG file format. That's the 3 letters after the dot. We actually do need to save it out as a PNG file. And that's this one here, the second line. And this might actually be, so this is format. This is going to be the cropped image and reset file type. Just so you know what I've done here. So let me save that out. And we'll go back to my folder. What are images? Here you go, share. And you can see now I have the PNG tile. And you can see, look at the file size. There's a difference in file size. So the JPEG was only 14 kilobytes. The PNG file is actually 61 kilobytes. And so, yeah, it's a bit larger, but that's the requisite file type that you need to load into the CS3. Now, once you kind of have that, and let me open that up really quick, and I'll show you that window. I believe this is the right one. That's the icon that we are going to load in this example. Now, I am going to basically show you how to place these on a USB stick and get it properly read into the USB stick. And that's just a precursor to what Rick will be showing you in a second. So let me go back to another window. Okay, so essentially when you're actually going to, and let me just kind of preface this. You can load icons either through a web browser interface, Rick will cover that, or you can load icons using your USB stick. If you do use the USB stick, it needs to be sort of formatted. You need to have folders formatted correctly. And so let me quickly go to my USB stick here. And for a CS3, this is the surface level. This is basically when you open up your memory stick or your thumb drive, you need to have a folder that's just called CS3.
All lowercase.
All lowercase, yes. And then when you open it up, you actually do need to place a folder in there called lokicons with a K, one word lowercase. Now you can see here there's a backup folder, and that's usually generated if you ever do a backup and save it onto a USB stick. But the lokicons folder, and again, let's back up the track. This is the surface. You need a CS3 folder, and in that folder, you need a lokicons folder. And there you can actually plug in, and you can see I already have a couple of icons in there. And I'm going to actually load the icon that I just created. And so the demonstration that Rick will show you won't have the same sort of icon, but let me get here. I actually moved it. So webinar images, and I need the PNG file type. That's this one here. And I'm just going to drag it over into this window and make sure, like you see it opened up two folders, and you want to be sure that you place it in the right folder. So you want to make sure it goes in the lokicon folder. You want to copy it, or you want to copy it if you want to save the original folder, but if you don't care and you just want to move it entirely, you just click move here. I'm going to create copy here. And when I open that up, you can see that that image is here. Now, obviously, I wouldn't name it this way. I would name it using the box number. You can see I have 3041. I'm going to open that up and show you what that icon. This was done on a CS2 for my CS2, and unfortunately, the image size there was maximum. I think it was like close to 100 pixels, not 384. So you can see that the image size is really kind of small.
And I want to say 128 by 80, something like that.
And you can see if I zoom in to make it larger, it's just fuzzy. You don't really want to use that. But if I show you that image I just created, even if I zoom in on this one, you still have a decent amount of resolution, especially since you're only going to see it usually at this size. So there's a big change between the CS2 and the CS3. And I believe, hopefully, if you guys are able to follow that, that kind of covers how you want to actually create icons. And for those of you kind of came in late and weren't able to catch this, hopefully just review the video. It's a lot of information for us to, if we need to repeat anything like that. So, all right. Does that cover everything, you think, Rick? Or you
you got it to the USB stick, and now we're talking about me taking over from there, because I have my USB stick already loaded into my Central Station 3, so you don't have to watch me plug it in. I'm sure you guys can figure out how to plug a USB stick into your Central Station 3. You just have to remember you put it in one of the
white slots.
One of the white slots. I keep getting them mixed up. The black slot is just for charging a device, so you want to make sure you put it in one of the white slots. Thanks for that, Curtis. Obviously, I do have that same locomotive, but I'm not using that icon because, we didn't coordinate that well. So once you get your USB stick into your Central Station 3, share my screen, and you're going to call up your locomotives. And obviously you're going to want to change one of your locomotives. The whole purpose of this. So we'll take this Loc here. And I will
first get into edit mode.
I'm not used to the lag. I forgot about that. So it already has an icon. Because it's just an Loc, it was basically a default locomotive that I entered. So it gave me a default icon, even though it says diesel Loc. It still gave me an electric locomotive. It's a computer, so it doesn't really know. I'll just get into the edit mode here for the icon. That was where the question marks would have been that Curtis showed you earlier. And you can see here that right now where the blue highlight is, it's looking at the CS3 in the lokicons file, and this is your standard icons that are already in your central station 3. And this is the library we're going to be adding to. And it's selected this first one at the top. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want it to look in the CS3. I want it to look in the USB. And it sees the USB, obviously, because it already is there. And now here's the lokicons file that we put in it. And there's the icons that I had loaded up yesterday, even though they're not the same picture as Curtis used. These are just ones that I had loaded. So basically, it's so simple. Now that you can see what file is on the USB drive, you just select the one you want. So there it is. Shows you a preview of it to the right. I don't have to search. And the top where it says file name, that's if I wanted to search for it. I'll click OK. Changes the icon. I click OK again. And there it is in my library. Okay, what's nice about this is once you do that, we can click on it again. And in the CS3 lokicons file, it's already in the CS3. It's already imported. You don't have to tell it to import it. You just have to assign it to a locomotive, and it imports it into your central station 3. So it's basically that simple. The hardest part about this whole procedure is getting the correct file size and getting the correct file type. And you have to know your software for editing pictures to do that. And if I wanted to change it, I can still change it. If I pick the wrong one, I can change it with another one.
I think also one thing to sort of be aware of on that last screen was that when you do select the USB stick to look into, you do have to remember that you need to click on the lokicons folder. Otherwise, you won't be looking in the lokicons folder. You're
Right.
just looking at what's on the USB stick. You're not
Right here, yeah, you're just the blue highlight tells you what the CS3 is, what you're looking at in the CS3, and we haven't chosen a file yet.
You need to look in.
Once I choose that file, it opens it up and you can see the pictures. So that's basically it for loading with a USB. Now that we've shown you the hard way, we can show you the easy way. You got to mute your microphone there when you're
All right, hang on.
answering questions.
Just answering questions.
Okay, so if you are capable of connecting your CS3 to your computer, okay, and that's with it's connected to your wireless router, and then you put the IP address into your computer, and you end up with this screen. Okay. Now, this is the home page basically, and what we're going to use this for is we're going to go up here to Locomotive Images. There's an overview where it will load what it sees in the central station of the images. Okay. Now, one thing to note is that you'll see that the two images that I put in there are not in this file. Okay. And they are in the central station. It's just that I would have to reboot my web interface for them to show up. So if you go looking for them right after you put them in, you probably won't find them. So it's not that big a deal. They are in there. So we're not going to be looking at that. What we're going to do is we're going to go up to the Locomotive Images, and we're going to go to uploading.
Hold on, Rick. So just before, to clarify, when we're rebooting, you're actually rebooting the CS3. Wasn't that correct?
Yes, I have to reboot
You actually have to reinitialize the CS3 to get it to show up in that folder. Also, while you're at that folder, can you go back there and just kind of point out sort of the benefits of loading things by part number, product number, rather than going through the list?
Well, yeah. If you look at all these names, they're all in here by what the name of the locomotive is.
Or look up like a DR locomotive, because you're going to see there's a lot of locomotives under D.
Or DB. DB has so many different. It's got if you look up, it's got 1,136 images for just the D's, and most of those are going to be DB. So if it's just kind of hard scrolling through your central station through the little tiny icons to find what you're looking for. It's just much easier to go by the item number that's on the box for the locomotive or car. At least we found it that way. You can always rename it something else. Uh, certainly.
The benefit of the part number too is when you have like multiple locomotives that are all the same class, but they're different paint schemes, then it makes it easier to locate a box number.
Yes. Because here's at the very top, there's two 143s. There's just a different unit number. So it's not like you need to, if you just have a red 143, yeah, you can use any icon. So it's just easier to find it if you're loading your own images. It's just, we like doing the item number. Okay, so moving on, upload image. So here you have the screen where it says in German, basically drag and drop your image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an image that is not the right file type. I'm going to take a JPEG image and I'm going to drop it in here. Let's go with, oh, not that one.
You might want to. You think it's easier if you share your whole screen instead of just the
I
application?
can, yeah, let me see let me see here. I will do that. There we go, new share, and here it is. Okay, so move this stuff out of the way so we can see a little bit. Okay, so I have to get my Windows set here. So why don't I take I'm going to take this one. I'm just going to drag it and drop it in here. Okay, there's that locomotive. Now you can see it's a little bit crooked because when I took this picture, it was a little bit crooked, and I wasn't able to straighten it before. I didn't think about it before I sent it from my phone, so it's a little bit crooked. Now because you can see that there's some blue lines on the left and the right. That's all the image it's going to show. The check marks are non-image, and you can see how much is hanging out on the left and the right. And if I just saved it the way it is, I'm not going to have any couplers or cutting off the cab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the image, and I'll just reduce it so I can see the couplers just out of preference. That's what the magnifying glass does here. Make it bigger, smaller. This is all real simple. If I needed to move left or right, I can. Same with up and down. Rotate if I wanted to, but really, why? This flops it left and right. Okay, reverses it. And this will do it up and down. And a reset, and you can see what it's going to look like with the eyeball. It's a preview. Okay, and then all I hit is upload. There it is. It's in my central station. That's it. It's in the right file type, it's in the right file size, and it's in my central station. So I believe, I actually didn't really test this, but I believe edit locos. (3774B). There it is. Save it. Save it. And that's it. There's two ways to get icons in your Central Station 3. Both are fairly simple and easy. Any questions?
Great. Presentation over.
Yeah, see you guys. Let's do lunch.
Yeah, so hopefully, you can follow that along. Hopefully that made all sense.
Yeah,
So
we knew
if
this
we
was going
don't
to be.
have any questions on that,
We knew this was going to be kind of
we
short
do.
because it's fairly simple.
Yeah.
Got it. We got
Okay.
Phil S.
So
raising his hand.
yeah. Okay. So just so you know, we did have a question. Once you load the icon into the CS3, it's okay to delete it from the USB stick. You don't have to keep them on there permanently.
Right. Correct.
So, okay. And that is done. Yes. So we had a raised hand there.
We did, but he put it down.
Okay, let's see, there is one question here. Well, I guess these questions are hit. I guess you answered these questions while I was speaking.
I did answer
Okay,
one about a
okay.
Central Station 2.
So, yeah, unless you guys have any questions, that leaves us actually with an open forum. Um,
Yeah.
you're willing to ask us anything else that, hopefully you can answer. Um, other than that, we do have another raised hand, Lothar. Okay. Hopefully, if Lothar, if you have a microphone, I'm going to allow you to speak.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. What do you got?
Yeah. So sorry, I tried to connect earlier and had some problems getting in. Right now, I just hear you. I'm online. So I just have a quick question. I have an older CS2 which I acquired a few years ago, and
Okay.
is that very similar to the CS3?
It's a little bit.
As far as loading through the USB stick, yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
little bit more complicated. I think, and you can try this, and it probably won't work because I'm going by memory. You have to put it on CS2, a file.
I
Okay,
think
where do
it
I
uses the
start?
same file type.
You
Let
need you
me let me
need
check.
you need the image in an icons file. That file needs to be in the CS in the backup file, and that backup file needs to be in a CS2 file. And it has to be the right size and the right format. And I think it was I think we said 128, and I think it was like 90 by 96, something like that. And in a PNG format, and I believe that's it. And you have to go and
I have okay. So as far as the dimensions go, I have it at 128 by 42
okay,
pixels.
42.
And so again, that file structure that you need is going to be CS2 with a backup folder with a icons folder inside that.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't actually have my thumb drive with icons. Oh wait, that's a copy. Um, so if that doesn't work, then the icons folder might need to be parallel to the backup folder.
It needs to be in the backup folder.
Okay, because I have a file structure that doesn't have the icons folder in the backup folder.
All right.
So I would actually try it both ways. If you don't see the icons, then you kind of know where it belongs at that point. But other than that, um, it's a PNG file type. Again, the size on that needs to be dimensioned down to 128 by 42. Really kind of small. Actually, yeah, 42 I think was the upper limit. But definitely 128 width is as big as you want to get them.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're loading a lot of space. One thing we found out when we did that with my CS2 was we loaded up all these icons, and it actually kind of slowed the CS2 down in some respects. Whenever you wanted to click or change an icon, the CS2 would need to actually scan through all the different icons. And
Yeah.
if you don't load all your locomotives or run all your locomotives, then it may not actually be necessary to do so.
Takes a while to load the icons to select them. And one thing is, and people are mentioning it, which we forgot to mention, is you don't have to take a picture of this stuff. You can basically get images from the internet. It really doesn't matter where you get the image. It doesn't even have to be a train image. You can take a picture of your kid and have it as an icon. So
Yeah, you don't have to use Marklin locomotives. You can use any locomotive you want. It's whatever your collection.
we were looking at it from the aspect of we don't have to search for an image. We just take a picture with our phone and we have the right paint scheme because it is that locomotive. So
Okay, so we do have a couple extra questions. We've got one on maybe we can explain how to use blocks as shown in the latest update. Let's kind of get back to that because I think that's a harder question to answer. We do have a question. Have you ever had the CS3 give an error message while adding an MFX locomotive on the main track? Quote, the warning is locomotive read incompletely. Yeah, that can happen.
Make sure your track's clean.
Well, you got dirty track. You've got, if you're moving trains around, you're sending commands out, and whether or not that's true or not, you're sending commands out where you're trying to receive information. So you really don't want to move things around on your layout manually, I suppose. And then if be aware of, like, if you have a lot of like electromagnetic noise going on, if you have, like, I don't know, what do you say, if you have a nuclear reactor going around near your layout, you never know if it's going to interfere with the read. Obviously a stable electrical system in your house will help. There's a comment. Google Images is also a great resource for finding images. Yeah, you can use whatever resource you want. Same editing techniques that I kind of showed, maybe, or if you have your own. Stripping out unsightly backgrounds, it can be more of a challenge, especially if you don't have customized or expensive software. That's basically eliminating stuff. I mean, frankly, if you have commercial grade software or pro grade software, you can basically create a transparency map, I suppose is what they call it, and just eliminate anything that's not a locomotive.
Right. Do you want to go through that work, or do you want to just take a picture of yourself with your own background and not worry about it?
Okay, let's see. Another question, really off topic, but have you had any experience with Marklin locos derailing when moving through turnouts, especially when passing over the higher center rail pins that are located by the frog within the turnout? Another facet, have you had any experience with the locomotive's drive wheels not possibly being manufactured in alignment?
No. A locomotive can derail over a turnout almost at any time. It's really tough for a locomotive to negotiate a turnout. The gauge of your wheels is important. Your slider is important at that point. If it's every locomotive, it could be the turnout. Turnouts need to be flat, not twisted, not screwed down. They should float so that they can move.
See if the frog points are not bent.
Right.
That might cause a nick in the wheel and make that wheel jump. I have sort of had instances like if you have a passive turnout. Basically, what I mean is when you have a turnout that's not being switched, and generally it's just set in one direction. However, you have a locomotive that goes in the other direction, that can cause that frog point to move halfway out and not reset itself against the rail. I had that happen on my layout, and the way to solve it was I actually had to sort of create commands to switch it back and forth so it did seat against the rail. If it doesn't seat, then yeah, you got potential issues because you're not actually catching the wheel correctly, and it's going to make it rise. So there's just stuff that you need to look out for. In general, just you need to observe and see, well, what's causing it. As far as the other part of the question, I haven't really seen anything where drives wheels are not in alignment. I guess. Wait, I think there was an instance a few years ago where the wheel spacing or the gauging wasn't correct.
I don't recall.
Yeah.
The wheels are made to move in the frame back and forth so the locomotive can go around curves. And yeah, the gauge of the wheel is very important, but it's hard to say in that aspect what the problem is. Again, you have to get down, literally you have to get down and look at it very closely with it running very, very slow to see exactly what the error is.
All right. So now we have, let's see, howdy doody. I forget what the precursor to the question you have, or dimmer switches for lights. So I can't answer that question because I don't remember the context of what your first question was. So if you have another question, you can sort of fill that out. Let me know. Okay, so we got a couple of technical questions. One is regarding events that you are able to switch manually. Actually, do you want to? We do have a hand raised.
You can go through these questions first and then get to it.
Well, my question is going to take some time to answer,
Okay.
so maybe let me set that up, and Rick, see if you can answer that or the raised hand, and
Okay.
because I do need to access the CS3. So.
Korash, your mic is muted. If you want to talk, you can. If you unmute your mic, if you have a mic.
Yeah, I don't have any question. Thanks.
Okay.
You rose your hand. Your hand was raised for no reason. Then
I don't know. I just turned on, so
okay. All right, no worries. We just give you some hard knocks for drawing our attention to you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Okay. So this isn't really gonna. Not too sure whether or not this is gonna be an effective way to answer it, since I'm not actually connected to track. So let's go to. Okay. Sorry, I meant, can an RFI from a dimmer switch be the reason for incomplete locomotive? If it's reacting to the track and sending out noise through the layout, yes, that's possible. I don't know enough about RFI stuff to accurately answer that, but basically, if you're generating any kind of noise or feedback through the track, you're interrupting sort of that digital code transference, and really.
Where's the dimmer switch? Do you have it on the track?
Okay. In the latest update, all right. So first of all, John, I think, yeah, you just basically say in the future, can you show how to use blocks as shown in the latest update? I really don't know if there were any changes to the update, but I think we need time to research that if there's anything new to it. Other than that, then blocks would just basically operate the same way as we've described in other webinars. So, and you can send us an email and kind of remind us if you want us to look into that further. I just don't know if there was any kind of update that changed the way blocks work. Now, so we have a question. He's basically, this user he set up events, but he can only trigger them using the sort of the screen activation, and that's basically manual operation, but he's not, he's not getting it to activate via track triggers. Or no, he's not actually able to use it using the web browser to control the app. So.
Yeah, but is he using the VNC viewer?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay.
And here we go.
So let's basically, if you're using,
he says it works with
control app. I think he also sent an email, and he was referring to he wasn't actually able to activate it using an iPad or an iPhone. I think one of those was correct. So let me share my. So that's an interesting question. I don't know if we've run across that bug with like an app device.
Let me see.
And especially during the web browser, you shouldn't really have any problems activating during the web browser unless you actually have something else configured incorrectly. That might actually mean that we possibly need to speak to you directly to figure out what your setup is. But as far as I know, I don't think we've ever had trouble activating events.
I'm gonna log in with my iPad here and see what happens.
All right, so let me actually, so I'm gonna actually share my window here really quickly. So, okay, so this is my layout, and everything is red because I'm not actually connected to track. But essentially what's going to happen is anything you activate through here is really just going to activate the software. It doesn't really activate the track, so it's not really necessary. Let's see if I can actually find a decent example here. So I'm going to use one of these K11s to see if it activates anything. Yeah, so obviously you can't have your track screen stopped, otherwise nothing will get activated. All right, let's see if we can set this up. So I can activate devices. Let's see if the event triggers. And yeah, probably not getting any reading. I think we might have to get back to you on that one because it's just kind of set up intrinsic since I'm not really connected again to a layout. I don't have an L88 connected or an S88 connected. So the system itself just might be halting the process since I'm not correctly connected to any devices. Okay, so yeah, Phil, just get back to us on that one, or we know I did see your email, so give us a chance to kind of review that and look it over, and we can talk about that then. Let's see. We have another question. I know that the CS2 is out of date, but it would be useful if you could address topics covering both CS2 and CS3. Yeah, it definitely is handy.
You're still sharing your screen.
Yeah. So I was just reading a question, so that's all right. So stop share. Yeah, it can be handy. I think right now, though, in the process of product production stuff, we mostly do cover the CS3. We have, since 2015, the newsletter articles really cover basically everything on the CS2. There's been not much updates. If you do have something more specific, then feel free to send us a note about what you'd like to cover, because kind of going back through the whole process of everything with the CS2, mockingly, I would say it's going to be a slow death for us because one, the CS2 is really kind of a slow processor, and we do sort of, in my case, because we're doing sort of modern updates on modern equipment, I've reset my whole layout to work with CS3 products, even though I do have some older components. It's sort of this whole backward compatibility issue that we'd have to address. Yeah, we could be here for another few years just answering that question. So apologies. It's better for us to answer specific questions if you have them, and we can definitely do that, I think, especially for the CS2.
And I can
Okay,
activate an event with my iPad, not through the VNC viewer.
yeah, okay, so yeah, Phil just kind of wrote he could not activate it using the web browser AP or on my laptop either. Yeah, I can't really say why that is the case for the browser, because there is really no settings to sort of adjust the VNC viewer unless you didn't. It's possible, I think, maybe we did have some users, rather than using the real VNC viewer link that was supplied in the Marklin site, they actually downloaded the VNC viewer. I think that caused him issues. If that's not the case, there's really no settings other than unless you're not. I'm not really too sure what the configuration is that would cause you not to be able to have access to control.
Yeah, unless he's using the app with the CS3.
Okay, so just kind of going back, let's kind of go through that procedure again, at least connecting to the CS3.
No, I mean the CS2 app.
Oh, yeah. So if you're using the main station app,
Yeah, the main station app
is really clear. It's the main station app or the mobile app that was built for the Central Station 2, and it doesn't really play nice with the Central Station 3. That's why it's better to use the IP number and the browser interface for the CS3. So hopefully that answers your question a little better. We're kind of we're addressing sort of unknowns. We don't really know all the configuration sometimes.
We're winging it.
Okay, looks like we had some questions that we can just kind of let you guys know what we answers. Somebody did ask you if we service. We do have a Marklin Service Center, and you're looking at them on the top half of your screen if it's Rick.
So I'm on the bottom.
You're on your no, for us I'm on the bottom, you're on the top. That's like a reference. Basically, he's not the Oriental looking guy.
There you go.
That PC? That wasn't PC, was it?
It's okay. You said it. You can do that.
Yeah, using VNC, real VNC, it does work, and I'm talking about the CS3 control browser interface. The control browser interface. Okay, the VNC viewer. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So you're actually talking about the control button. All right, so that question is, let's kind of go back to there. Let me set this up here for you. So 2.168.1.55. We're accessing my computer. All right, so back to sort of that question we've been on for a while. Let me share my screen. Okay, so basically he's at this screen here. There are two ways that you can actually sort of, quote, control your CS3 barring we're not having issues. The method that we've been using is we use the build shroom server. That's under the system button. When we click on that, you basically have the real VNC viewer app, which he has no problem with. And it also has the server where you're starting the CS3 server. What he's referring to is he's actually using the control button on the right side. And let me click on that and give the system a chance to. It might not work because I actually have it as server. So there it goes. It's starting it. It's booting up. So apparently he says he's having control issues with this screen. This, when you use the control button, you don't have access to any of the, or at least there are certain aspects you see under the edit button. The only edit thing we can edit is the trackboard page. You won't have access to edit any of the icons or anything like that. So what he's referring to is he's basically saying, so I'm checking my CS.
Yeah, he's basically saying he can't start it when he pulls down that, the event menu. He can't start a event because no, I can't on my iPad. I see that. But I can do it from the track diagram screen, hitting a contact.
So let me.
So I see what he's saying.
Yeah, okay, I see what he's getting at now. So let's see if I can actually get this to trigger right. Yeah, it doesn't. At least my contact event isn't triggering. But then again, it could be because I'm not actually connected to anything. Right. So that, yeah, that might actually. If we can't get it to test here, obviously I can't test it right now with the setup that I'm currently running.
Well, drag down, touch your events up there at the top.
All right, let's see what he does.
Okay, and there you can't activate them.
Okay, so let me see. This is case.
But you can activate them from your contacts.
Well, I was just activating it from my contacts. Is that
right? But here you can't.
Yeah. So if I hit the play button, nothing's happening. Is that
right.
what we're saying? Yeah, it could be a bug that needs to be reported. But you know, like here again, even if I click my activation, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So
mine does on my central station behind me.
And again, it could be because the display that I'm showing you guys isn't connected to any tracker devices. Rick says it works. He's connected to his layout, so yeah, that could be the case. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, it might be something we need to escalate. Let's see. Any other questions? Let me check. Did I close my browser one? I should see if there's anything on YouTube here. All right, we got somebody pleading for more. Whatever we can give you. We have, give us.
Phil S. raising his hand.
All right.
Allow to talk. Go ahead and talk, Phil. Unmute your microphone. Oops, wait a second. I screwed up.
Yeah, wrong guy.
Wrong guy.
Picked him here.
It jumped just as I hit the button.
Yeah.
Oops, I did it again. Phil put his hand down, so it kept going to someone else.
Yeah, okay. So basically we've kind of addressed his issue there. So yeah, it could be something that we need to sort of look into. And those are all answered. Any other questions, or you guys want to know anything about that we can, if we can answer?
It's amazing how short the presentation was this time. I think it's the shortest one yet.
you know, I put them to sleep with my 2-hour presentations from episodes 8 and 7.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Happens just by talking to me. Let's see. Anything you guys questions regarding? Let's see what do you got. Locomotives, peripherals, S88s, L88s. What else can we do? M84s, M83s.
New items that we just received.
New items that we just received.
We can start the look what I got segment.
Anything on the layout that we can show? I don't know if there's anything.
Apparently, we've done a very good job.
Stopping with CS3. All right. Anything you can think of?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Do I have anything anyone should know? Probably not. Full of useless information.
Okay, so Phil, you are again, the event you're trying to activate only involves only a locomotive decoder, not an S80 contact. Kind of like what Rick's Christmas tree was doing, but using a decoder in a wagon.
See that? He referred to my Christmas tree, Chris.
Yeah, you pat yourself on the back. Upcoming train shows once things open up. I think the only thing that I'm aware of that was slated for is actually the Gardner and Railway show in Nashville. Euro West has been canceled for 21. That's in July. That won't happen. And usually I think for the regular ones that I end up going to are the Gardner Railway show, and then in November, which was the
Milwaukee Train Fest.
The Milwaukee Train Fest. I don't know the status on that one.
I think. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I was kind of assuming the next train show we're going to be able to go to is going to be Amherst in January. It's kind of.
Do we want to? Are we going to mention the Firebox chats at all?
Nah.
Okay. We do have a presentation with some ETE groups.
Yes.
I think we have one coming up on the 16th of this month, and then one in April.
Yes, with the New England chapter, and then it will be on the 3rd of April with the Great Lakes chapter. And Curtis was referring to our Firebox chat that we just post on the Marklin blog, that we're just gonna come on and do this and answer questions. Just
Yeah, not really affiliated with what we're skiing here. We have to quote be a little more professional on this, so we can talk about anything in the Firebox chats. Okay, we do have a question regarding signals and MFX loading. Okay, yeah, let's kind of address that, because recently I just was helping a client with some issues regarding MFX signals. Let's see if I can. So this is basically, we're free falling, guys. So whatever you get is not going to be scripted or structured. So essentially,
so it's a normal
yeah
webinar for us, not scripted or structured.
How do you get invited to the Firebox chats? There is no invite. There is just sending out a notice through marklinusers.net. Okay, so you can see my screen here. Let me actually get to a screen that's going to be useful to you. Close that one. So the issue sort of that I was addressing with the user, which I believe is similar to the signal issue that you're referring to, are when you load an MFX device and you use the dip switches, but it was not recognized. There could be two issues with that, and even it varies depending on the user. So like or at least the machine. So the user that I had, he actually had the weren't being recognized. He couldn't find it, and that was on a CS2 originally. And basically sent them to me, and I had to correct for all that stuff because he was essentially going to transfer over to CS3. And I ran into one signal that it was not being found, or it was not being recognized, and or it wasn't being placed as it should be, and that was after setting the dip switches. And in his case, it was sort of discovered that the dip switches on his CS on the signal light were not seating properly. In other words, they weren't switched uh, accurately, whether it's due to oxidation or he couldn't force the switch over enough. Basically, even though it was supposed to be addressed at, say, 43, it wasn't being placed in 43. It was being placed in a completely random number. It's less of an issue with the Central Station 3 because the Central Station 3 will only load up icons that it's spotted. So you can reset your dip switches, basically kind of move them back and forth, and then reset the address, make sure they're properly set. But the other half of your question is, if it's not being recognized, then it could be sort of the handshake block that we've referred to before. And I don't really need to share a screen here. I don't know why I did that. So basically what happens is, when you load an MFX device, you're dealing with two devices, and it creates a handshake. In other words, the signal will be notified that it is registered with the control, the Central Station 3. The Central Station 3 will recognize that it has already loaded the signal. And the problem is that if there was an error occurred, or you deleted it somehow, and you didn't sort of have the two devices connected when you deleted it, one still recognizes the other device, and when you try to reload it, the handshake is being blocked because it wasn't sort of properly deleted. So when you delete something, it removes this sort of handshake, this connection back and forth. So that could be an issue there. And the problem there is that in order to clear that, there's two things you either have to do. Either you have to find out where it is, if it is in the system, and then properly delete it. In other words, having it connected with track power and then deleting it. Or, and this is the worst part, you need to take it to another controller, like your signal, to another controller and have it registered that to break the connection with your controller. And then you have to bring it back to your controller. And that's kind of what I ran into, is that he had a handshake issue. He didn't know where things were located. And I had to clear all that stuff out by loading them onto my machine and then deleting them from my machine and then reloading it onto his machine. So it's a long sort of process. It gets kind of confusing, especially with MFX users, because we're really, even to this point, it's sort of an unstable explanation. It's hard for us to explain that stuff without actually kind of doing the process yourself. So hopefully that kind of helped you out. If you still, okay, so the signal was not recognized and used with an MS2. So yeah, he's basically, you're doing that. It's possible that that handshake is keeping your MS2 from reloading it, especially if you deleted it from Mobile Station 2. So in short, I guess one way to say is, you might have deleted it from your Mobile Station 2 while your signal was disconnected from the system, and therefore you only eliminated half of that handshake problem. They have to be deleted when it's connected to the track. And a lot of these guys who've just basically been dealing with locomotives have run into the same problem. They'll have a MFX locomotive that's loaded. They didn't save their system properly. They restarted the Central Station 3, and then they couldn't find the locomotive again because the locomotive has recognized that it's already been loaded by that Central Station 3. And so they kind of get messed up that way. There's just a warning signs. When you load things up and they're working, make sure you back up your system. Can't really do that so with a Mobile Station 2, can you? Is there a backup?
Nothing to back up.
There's no real
system
save
setting.
and then if you're going to delete it, if you think you have an error and you just delete the locomotive and it's not on track, then you're definitely going to run into that handshake issue. So you want to be aware of that. Okay, let's see. I think that was answered. Answered anything? Yeah. Phil had this problem with the 555. Phil, you love raising headaches, don't you? The 55524s, I hate to say it, I've gotten a number of calls for people having troubles getting those to sort of operate and address. These are LGB products, by the way, for those who don't know what that is. They're basically single unit decoders for turnout motors.
That's isn't that the multi decoder?
No, the 55525 is the multi decoder. That's for HO guys. That's the equivalent of a K83 or an M83.
You know a lot about LGB. You should take all those questions.
You're killing me. I let our boss do it, but he doesn't want to. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, as far as signaling goes, yeah, and you want to load them, it's good to use dip switches, but you know, if it doesn't address correctly those dip switch settings, it's frustrating because you don't really know when the dip switches are off. Yeah, the 55524s, yeah, you could definitely be having an addressing issue with those MFX devices. I don't know. It's just there's all kinds of unanswered questions regarding that we can't really address, partially because we aren't LGB sort of collectors, and so we don't have a lot of product that we can test. We have to order that just to have something to test, and frankly, I don't have any 55524s in my inventory right now to run tests. But yeah, you're not alone if you're having some issues with that. Okay, so again, he has a problem with the 55524 using MFX. It attached to an uncoupling track and the correct icon was not available. I had to reprogram the 55524 using DCC to get the correct icon option. Yeah, other than just me trying to explain how you should have been able to change the icons, I'm not really too sure.
So it sounds like you found a solution.
Or you're blocked out. Well, you went to DCC. So yeah, that either way works, I think. Yeah, that's always kind of confusing because when you talk about LGB, normally people are thinking they're using DCC, and with MFX, it gets confusing because sometimes, you know, we just think MFX is just a Marklin Motorola protocol shell. And I haven't really when that question came about, I don't think I really looked into it to see if it's a overall shell protocol that resides over DCC as well. I don't think it does. Basically, here's the theory. If you have an MFX icon, and let me share my screen really quick, see if I can do this. Been having trouble with my screen displays. Basically, if you have an MFX device and the icon does not mismatch, well, you know, just for example, let me just select one of these items here. Doesn't matter what it is. Then you should be able to, I think, just change the icon base. And you see how it changed in the upper left just by clicking at new one. And you don't do this on... this is where it gets sticky because the MFX, the 55524, it doesn't have connection points to reprogram the way a 55525 does. So I'm under the assumption that it gets edited the standard way, which is how I'm showing you. You just need to select the device you want, and then you just need to change the icon the way it is, the way you need it to be. And hopefully... I forget what that icon was when I started. So I'm going to have an icon that switched. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Just cancel out of it.
So anyways, yeah. So hopefully, you know, again, if it didn't change out, there's oh yeah, you know, the tricky thing about the 55524 is that if you do reprogram it, and this is where it gets kind of bizarre, is I think it was a two-step process. You had to change two CVs. The first CV was to actually put the device, the 55524, in edit mode, and then you got to change the CV value that you want to change. And you didn't do that. Let's say if you had a number of items that you needed to alter, you couldn't just hit the coding change CV first and then edit 4 different options. You had to hit the edit change each change that you made. So instead, you'd have to go edit change CV, edit change CV, edit change CV. Hopefully, that made sense. It's a rough answer, but again, I don't have a straightforward answer for you, Phil, because I don't have the product in hand, but I know people have been having sort of issues with that, and I think we've actually had to do some warranty returns on a couple of those items. So anyways, okay, anything else? Yeah. Is Marklin compatible with Bachman?
No, it's the other way around. Bachman's not compatible with Marklin.
Well, okay, so there's kind of weird ways to answer that, as I would think. Okay, so Bachman, basically, in my book or in my mind, is a 2-rail system.
Yes.
And the Marklin controller, the Central Station 3 controller, is a multi-protocol system. In other words, it will operate with DCC as well as with Marklin Motorola. And obviously you can't mix 2-rail and 3-rail tracks, but however, you can control both systems using the one controller. Simultaneously even. And as far as being able to control Bachman, the most I can tell you is, yes, the Marklin controller will operate DCC, but I think the caveat is just to say DCC sort of standards. As long as the Bachman stuff is compliant with DCC standards, then I don't believe you're going to have an issue with that. But then we are dealing with third-party products, at least from the standpoint of Marklin, LGB, and Trix. But that's as far as compatibility goes. Now, again, Rick did point out you can use DCC and Marklin Motorola sort of at the same time. And in this sense, if you're talking about Marklin products like semaphores and signal lights and like turnout motors, not the actual turnouts, then yeah, that's possible too, I would think, in theory. So as long as you're not sort of mixing you're not cross-wiring like your track inputs where you're going to short stuff out.
Yeah, you can't combine the rails, and you can't run a 2-rail locomotive on a 3-rail system like Marklin. But a DCC, the central station will control, and the mobile station will control DCC. They're both multi-protocol.
Yeah, it's all about polarity when it comes to the rails and interreaction. So, all right. Anything else? Oh, I see George. George, we got one of our members here I was just explaining his signal light issues. I see he's online. Yes. Sorry, George, I had to use you as an example. So, any other questions, folks? Guys, you got anything?
Raise your hand and talk if you want to talk to us.
Yeah, if you want anything you want to share. Was there anything notable in any kind of newsletters or?
I haven't read the Marklin magazine yet. I haven't had time, so I don't know what's in there. We could be in there for all we know.
Oh, that's a mistake. Yeah, well, we don't want to really create dead airspace. So.
Right.
Don't really can't think of anything else to share.
Yeah, I haven't received anything new, really.
Yeah,
I did have one instance, back to that signal issue. I did have one instance where a customer sent me a signal to check out. It's a new digital light signal, and while it does work if I program it manually, it does not register MFX, which I thought was very odd.
Was an MFX signal?
Yeah.
Huh. Do you remember what the I think, was there a reset a factory reset on those signals?
Well, it's the same. It's almost like the protocol, has been turned off, the MFX protocol, but the Marklin Motorola protocol still works. And I just have to, because obviously we can't service those. We just have to send it back, and I'm not going to tear into it. There's no way to get into the CVs to have it look for MFX protocols like you can for a decoder or whatnot. So all I can do is send it back. I'd love to tear into it, but I'm not going to give them back a signal in pieces or destroyed. So
I think I've done something like that. Just sort of, okay, so kind of a reference that Rick kind of touched on, which probably did it subconsciously, but it's something I hear. I do want to sort of reiterate to some of these guys, when you, especially new users, when you have new or old locomotives, the newer decoders, again, I'm talking about the Mfx decoders, just kind of ins and outs of the Mfx decoders. If you have them on your layout and you do need to change values, the MFX decoders, and I think it applies to mostly locomotives. I don't know. I forget if it doesn't really apply to MFX signals. But generally, when you do some basic programming, you do not program them on a programming track. They would be programmed while attached to the main line. Signals and semaphores, they do have special features in certain CV values that do need to be programmed on the programming track. And then I would check the manual for those. But overall, when you have an MFX, you can definitely try to reprogram it on the main line, and it won't interfere with any other devices. It's not like an MF, or it's not like an FX decoder that if you program on the main line and you reprogram it, you're going to basically reprogram all your FX decoders to that same setting.
which I've done. I had like 5 locomotives on the track that were FX, and it's like, well, really quick, I'll just change the ports on the central station, and I accidentally changed all the locomotives to the same address at once.
Yeah. Oh, we do have a question here. Oh, we actually have a couple questions. I missed one on YouTube, so let's get to that one. Is there something I can let's see? Can you show how to change address on a locomotive on the CS3? I have to go to my retailer every time I need to do that, and it is a bit tiresome. Well, I would certainly agree with you that it would be tiresome. So let's kind of look at that really quick. Share my screen again. Okay, now again, if you need to program or change, was that change address? I forgot the question already. If you do need to change address on a locomotive, first thing you need to do is, well, if it's basically, you have to know what type of decoder you're dealing with, and the biggest sort of disparity is with whether it's MFX or if it's a non-MFX decoder. And Rick, go ahead and chime in if you see anything that I'm missing or need to edit. You can see here, that you can't change the address because it is an MFX decoder type, and that's this particular local.
You're not going to be able to do it because you're not connected.
Yeah, I might not be able to do that. So the other thing to do is, do you want to show this then? Maybe.
Yeah, let me show you.
Because then you might have to go to the configuration. There's that method there. So I'll let Rick kind of. Are you ready to kind of show?
No, I don't have a locomotive on the tracks. So.
Okay, so let me answer this other question. Per, we'll get back to your question in a second here. Several locomotives you converted to digital, they fail to restart after stopping at a signal. So if I give them a little push, they start. Yeah. I am using M-track and old semaphores that control track power at the signal. Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, you need service, Dan. That's the short answer.
You think so? Is that what it is? Yeah, your motors could need cleaning up a little bit. And this is a little bit of guesswork because I don't really know the conditioning or layout. Dirty track. We do I think there have been certain locomotives, even newer ones, that um, Rick has sort of determined that they've been saturated with some kind of lubricant, where the lubricant and the magnets or the motor brushes are a little softer and causing those kind of issues. I actually have a locomotive that when it stops, it doesn't want to start on its own. I'm still trying to explore to figure out what's actually causing that. But definitely, I would check for, maybe the motors need to be cleaned a little bit. I like to sort of grind down or file down the curve on my motor brushes so they don't get hung up on the motor armature. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, that's good to send us an email and we can maybe give you a better explanation at that point. Also, Rick has sort of a service video as available, and we can supply you that link. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So now again, the question is, how do you change an address? And yeah, you didn't really specify whether it's an MFX locomotive or not.
Well, this is actually going to be good because there's an issue where people get confused on these very easily. So I just loaded up this E94, the white one on the upper left. Obviously, it's a new locomotive that just got registered, and it's got the red bar around it, so that lets you know that's the newly recognized locomotive. Okay, so it says it's address 16. Okay, now this only applies, what I'm going to tell you only applies is if you take a MFX locomotive and you want to run it on a 6021 layout. Because you need to know the default address. The manual will tell you the default address. And you load it on your central station and it says it's address 16, but in reality, the default address is different. And once all this loads, I'll show you. And we haven't, Curtis and I have an idea of what the explanation of this is. And what we think it is the central station is only assigning that address 16. It's just a marker. That's the lowest available number it can give it because it's an MFX locomotive. So from the way I think it works is address 1 to 15 is taken up by the central station by either markers or real addresses. And 16 was the lowest available one. So if we go down here to formats, I believe it is, and we scroll down, where is it? There, MM2 address. See, it says it's 19. Okay, so that's the MM2 address, which is the default address. If I wanted to run it on a 6021, or if I want to enter it manually as a locomotive, it will respond to address 19, not address 16 like it shows here. So this is just a marker so that the central station can search for it. So you can search for it when you change your criteria up here by address. Okay, it's still new, so it's still showing in the first position. At least that's what we think it is. We're not 100% sure of that, but it gives you that random number as 16, where the actual default address, and now it's got to read it again, is going to be 19. Okay, so there's, I believe your question is more directed towards a FX decoder, how to change the address. And you can do it two ways. FX decoder. I think I have an FX locomotive. Maybe I don't. Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, once again, I want to make, just reiterate that when you do change an MFX decoder, like changing the address as we're doing here, it needs to be on the main line. It's not done on a programming track.
Okay, so again, if I wanted to change the default address of my MFX locomotive, I could go in here And if I can get this to scroll just right, it's a little tough. Click on that. I can make it whatever I want. It will automatically change that in the locomotive because it is an MFX locomotive and is on the main track. Okay, so if I wanted to change it now, I could. And then I just hit OK and it saves it. So unfortunately, I have to add a locomotive. Now I have an FX locomotive that I just put on the track. I'm going to have to add it. Add locomotive. Marklin Motorola. According to my database, it's 38. There aren't 16 functions on a FX decoder. And I'm just going to put this as I got to do it in this keyboard, V, whoops, get rid of that. We're going to go to V36. So diesel. There you go. There's a V36 diesel. Okay. So I'll save that. Okay, it's saved. It's a V36 diesel down here on the right. So edit locomotives, V36.
Now, just kind of make sure you are aware, when we're dealing with a decoder type that's non-MFX, this has to be programmed on the programming track itself.
On the programming track. Now, it looks like I made a mistake because the address is actually 38. So to change the address, I'm going to go to 38 because I screwed up.
I thought you put it in.
I thought I did too, but apparently I did it on my keyboard and not on the central station.
Mm.
Okay, so pretend I did it right there. I'll go V36.
You're asking a lot.
And okay, so now what I'm going to have to do to change that address is I need this locomotive on the programming track because it is an FX decoder. Only FX decoders need to be programmed on the programming track. An FX decoder is a single direction data transfer from the central station. There's no feedback from the decoder to the central station like an MFX decoder. There's no bi-directional communication. So basically, the central station knows that it has to output these commands only on the programming track. So to change this, it's really easy. All I have to do is change it here and click OK. And it sends it to the programming track. And you'll see the headlights blink on an FX decoder, only an FX decoder. Now, I can also get into the configuration because it's not bidirectional communication, it's only one way. It gives you the default CVs here, 1 to 6. Okay. CV1 is always the locomotive address. I can just change it here to whatever I want. And I can go 38. And then you hit program.
Can we go over, can you go over those icons? Just define those icons at the top so people understand those.
Yeah. Real quick, if I wanted to get to a different CV, if I wanted to get to, I don't know, for some reason, I don't know what it does, but CV20, all you do is you just change this value to whatever CV you want. You change the value here to whatever you want and hit program again. So just because it says 1 to 6, it doesn't mean you can't change it. Now I don't want to mess with anything in this locomotive. So I'm going to set this back to 4 and go back to its program, standard CVs. Okay, right here, CV added with the plus, all that does is give me a new line down here at the bottom. You'll see there's 7. Click it again. Now there's CV8. Click it again. Now there's CV9, where you don't really have to do that. You can just edit this number to whatever you want. Save will save it on the central station, I'm assuming. I'm not sure. I've never used the save or the load. Load will probably load it from a central station, whatever files you need to. Help will obviously give you the help file on any screen of the central station. If there's a help, it will give you instructions. And the delete would probably delete it back to the default. So again, only Mfx decoders need to be on the programming track to edit them. Mfx do not. So there's your short story for the day. Get out of this.
Did you actually explain those icons again?
Yes.
I didn't hear you.
From what I knew of them, yes.
Can you open them up again, or I can point out some stuff? I wasn't sorry. I was writing stuff out, so I might have missed something you said.
Okay. That's okay. Share screen. Oops. Edit logos.
All right. So just to kind of point out, and Rick might have said this, unfortunately, I wasn't really listening. So the programming, this icon here under prog means you're actually writing your changes to
Your
the
data
decoder on the programming track, just a programming track. The CV value added, I think that was a newer function. I don't remember what that all does.
No, I went through that. It just adds another line down at the bottom.
Load is important because what happens is you might actually get this generic list that he's looking at, and when you click on load, it actually should display a sort of listing of pre-configured devices. In other words, it's going to give you the proper CV value. So if you have, like, let's say a DCC or an MSD3 decoder, and you want to change one of those values, then if you click on that, it's going to load up basically a profile for that decoder with a proper listing of CV values, rather than having to guess what CV values you need to change.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. I've never explored that.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted you to kind of go over that.
That's awesome.
So you can show that. So yeah, we do have some more questions if we're kind of off. Saving it, if you want to save your own profile, basically.
Profile. Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, if you have a whole bunch of locomotives that you edited the characteristics of an Mfx decoder, this would be very handy. I can see this because you have your acceleration delay and your braking delay that you want set. It could be a little bit easier to do a whole bunch of them this way, saving a profile, as it would be to editing each CV individually here, where your acceleration braking delay is. So yeah, okay, that's very handy. That's good to know.
Okay, so let's see. We got one question. A gentleman was asking the max, and I kind of half answered this. Does changing the max speed CV change the actual max speed of a locomotive, whether it's MFX, FX, or DCC? Again, the max speed setting is relative. It's not a hard number. You can't just, it's not like saying setting it for 255 means your train's going at 255 centimeters a second, that kind of thing. It just means it's a percentage of 100 from 0 to 100. And setting it for 125 won't necessarily mean it's going to run at half the speed, which is roughly half of 255. It's a balancing act because you have sort of acceleration curves, which means whether or not the locomotive is going to reach maximum acceleration at a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time. That's acceleration curve. Plus, you're reaching with variables like what's the sort of efficiency of a motor? Is it going to actually turn faster than another motor? You can have two similar motors, like 5-pole motors, that are going to operate at different maximum speeds. And that's sort of like friction, weight of your train, all that kind of stuff. So what you do is when you change the value settings, and that's one of those settings, you can play around with it all day, and just basically once you get it up to full speed on your controller, see if you like it at that speed. If it's too slow, then raise that number. You can't raise it above 255, but generally, you adjust it a midway point. So you're going to have to kind of observe it. So there's no way to sort of give you a hard answer. When we receive locomotives, Rick and I, Rick likes to joke around that they're not slot cars. So we always throttle the maximum speeds down. So, when I have like my nephew come over and play with it, he's not running my trains onto the floor. So we just kind of slow everything down at a slower speed. 125 is a fairly safe value. I think high speed trains, I might set them for, like closer to 200. I don't
Yeah.
leave them at max speed.
Also, you got to remember different types of locomotives. They're geared different also. So your 255 for one locomotive may be slower than 255 for another type of locomotive because the gearing is different, getting down to the wheels. So keep that in mind also. You can't just set all your locomotives at 200 and expect them to go all the same speed.
Yeah. Okay, there's one quick question we can answer. When we press the program button, which CV is downloaded to or I guess you mean transferred to the decoder?
It transfers all of them. Basically, if there weren't any changes, it doesn't do any change to it, but it transfers it reads them and transfers them, even though the default, it looks like it. I guess the easy answer is it transfers the ones that are changed. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's how
it reads them all, but it transfers the ones that are changed.
Because, it's a good question. Because one, in the instance that we had, it's not loading all the CV values. MFX isn't an issue because MFX is going to load all its CV values. Therefore, it's only going to send the ones that are changed. FX could be confusing because it doesn't load any values up. So it probably just sends the ones that you're editing rather than the full list of CV values. Here's another question that I have 5 uncouplers and I'm controlling them with an M83. I have changed the decoder to have 8 individual outputs.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 uncouplers connected, one to A and one to B. And I just want to make sure that the correct operation is that the uncouplers alternate their operation and there is no way to activate each uncoupler individually on demand. Or am I doing something wrong? I forget. The M83, does that allow you to control the outputs independently? I thought it was.
Yeah, the M83 is configurable,
I thought that was the M83.
Identically to an M84. The difference is the M83 uses track power to activate the user, where an M84 uses your power input for the user. Okay, so if you're connecting to an M83, you're using track power to power whatever you're trying to activate. Now, I'm not sure I followed the question, and it may take a while for me to figure it out. The uncouplers shouldn't alternate their operation. You should be able to do them both at the same time if you wanted to. You can do them individually, and when you say on demand, you would have to do it in your articles list. If that answers your question, if I'm following your question correctly, because at that point you have an individual button for each output. You have a red and a green button that you can activate itself or activate either one. So at least I believe it works that way. I've never tried it. I've only done it with the M84. I haven't actually done the same configuration with an M83. So hopefully that answers the question. All right. Did you read Phil's? Are we going to cover that? Do we have time? I think that's more of you're muted, Curtis.
Yeah, we kind of covered that a little bit. Well, yeah. If we answer that, it's a bit challenging because it was also, didn't you include that partially in last month's webinar?
Changing individual sounds. I know you can volumes. You can do it in the programmer, but I don't know if you can edit that in a factory decoder in the Locomotive.
Yeah, what you're trying to change there is you're trying to alter the audio mix of sound
Mm-hmm.
files. You're not trying to change the maximum volume of the sound file. And that it gets a little complex because then you actually have to drill down into what makes up the sound functions on a decoder. And it's possible to edit individual sounds. But yeah, it's maybe something we can cover in the future. It's not something we explore too often.
Well, yeah, and on a retrofit decoder, you can easily do that. The problem is with a factory decoder is you cannot get into the factory decoder to change those settings. The programmer will not read a factory decoder because they're so to say locked. So I don't think you can do that from a Locomotive straight out of the factory.
So just to reaffirm, there are CV configs in the M83 that allows us to set them up as independent controllers. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, at least as far as we recall.
It's configurable like a M84.
Okay. So again, we're gonna go back. We're gonna revisit the question of speed settings. So you have a shunter that runs at 60 kilometers an hour. Will it run on your layout at an equivalent speed with the CV value at 255? What does changing the value to 60 kilometers per hour on the main screen have as an effect? Okay, so if I sort of, I could be misinterpreting your statement or your question here, but essentially what happens is speed settings it gets a little random.
Is he talking about the speed dial?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm getting at. So let me kind of go through that. So the thing is, at least how I'm going to interpret this. Let me get into my edit window here. Again, I won't have, let's see, I got to pick a non.
You may not be able to do it.
I got to pick a non-MFX locomotive from my collection here. Let's try this one. I think that it's the 442. That should be from the starter set. Okay, so basically your maximum speed is the actual physical output of your locomotive. And that's that's the maximum speed setting. You do have a shunting speed. Is there a shunting speed setting on the MFX locomotives where you can actually set the maximum shunting speed?
No, the shunting speed, I believe, just cuts your speed you're at in half.
It's just a percentage. Okay.
And then there's the weight icon, which takes off the acceleration braking delay.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one. Those are two things. Now the other thing is your speedometer dial. That is really just a number. It's sort of like, so right now you can see in the lower right on my screen the speedometer is set for 120. If I change that number to 60, right, thinking it's going to be half set, my maximum speed on that motor is still 255. The only thing you're changing is the display number on the dial. That's what that speedometer number is.
Which bring it up to show them.
So let me change.
Well, actually, you got it there on the right.
Yeah, so you see over here on the top it says 120 kilometers an hour, right? So I could knock that down to 50. Oops, can't knock it up. If I knock it down to 50, and I think I have to save it out and then reopen it, and it changes the maximum speed setting. It has no effect on the maximum speed step. Basically one way to look at it is I have 255 speed steps to reach this number, but it's still going to go at 100% of the motor's capacity. If I change this number back to 120, go back in there. Even though it says 120, I still have 255 speed steps to meet the maximum 100%. It's only going to be how I break this down. It doesn't affect what this number is basically these two numbers are sort of isolated.
One's a
And
visual
I think I
representation.
might have said that wrong. Yeah, you're still going to get 100% speed motor power. If you want your trains to actually go slower, for instance, and we'll think of it this way. Let's do something absurd. If I sent it for a maximum speed of 25, right? And again, it's a relative number. It's only going to go as fast as this 25 rating, which could be, let's say it's just 20, let's just say it's 10% of the maximum speed that the motor can handle. Okay. It's still only going to reach 25% of the motor capacity, even though my speedometer says 120 on it. And so it's just sort of how we address that question. This could be 50, this could be, 100. Your motor is only going to go up to the fastest setting on your maximum speed, which is going to be, in this case, set for 25, which is, it's roughly 10% of 255, which is 100% motor capacity. So hopefully that helped answer
Yeah,
that.
the speed dial is what you're setting at that.
Yeah, it's basically, so whoops, I went actually too far. So if we're looking at this, that's this setting here, right? This particular locomotive has a sort of display dial at 320. If I change that number, that speedometer number, to 60, well, then rather than saying 300, it's going to probably say 60. And it actually does not affect the speed of the locomotive. That's the speedometer setting. The speed of the locomotive has got to be set by the speed setting of the locomotive, which, let's go back to here. That's this one, which is going to be in the setup window under maximum speed. That's how you change the maximum speed of the locomotive. Okay.
All right.
That. Let's see. We'll get out of stop share. Let's see. Any more questions? Okay, great. Let's see. All right, so that was clear. I think that was all those questions. We got a few more minutes left if we have any more questions. Has this one been answered already? Yeah. We did have a question that I answered, and I'll just kind of reiterate. If you have a loc that you're going to take from the layout for an undetermined amount of time, do you need to delete it from the CS3? Theoretically, no. We don't really know if it shouldn't have any issues sort of recognizing an Mfx locomotive if you put it back on track. But, it's like, I think as an independent user, if it's just your layout, unless you have a crazy amount of trains, I wouldn't really think it's necessary to delete it from the CS3. Frankly, the CS3 is really nice when you have a large collection, because of the faster processor speed that's in the CS3. CS2, in my experience, it did bog down a little bit.
Yeah, I guess the only problem you would have if you haven't had a locomotive on your track in a long time is finding it in your inventory and remembering if it was registered, if you've ever had it on the track. Because you may forget that it's in the inventory, put it on the track and wait for it to register, and it's not going to because it's already in there. So that's the only problem I see.
Yes,
User error.
All right. Well, we 6 minutes left, and we can either start thanking you now, or we can take any last minute questions. We can go on a little longer, guys, if you have any questions that needs more explaining. We do thank you for visiting with us. I know a 2-hour session is a long way to go.
Well, it is for us.
I tried to cut them down to an hour, but I got fought against.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it'd be long enough.
Well, definitely some of the seminars weren't.
Yeah.
But it's hard to suck up that kind of information. It looks like we definitely had some visitors from around the world. We appreciate you visiting us and joining in on the webinars.
Phil S. We keep saying that the MFX locomotives need to be programmed on the main. Does the program track not have two-way communication? Yes, it does have two-way communication, but we found, I think lately, that there seem to be issues when you're trying to edit and register locomotives on the programming track. For one, I know that the voltage threshold is a little bit lower on the programming track. Not that that matters in HO, but I have tested LGB locomotives on the programming track, and it causes a reset in the central station, where I put the same locomotive on the main track and there is no reset when I test that locomotive.
Yeah, the other thing that you sort of that answers the why is that the programming track, when you use the programming track, the system actually sends out a bit signifier that tells the decoder that it's about to be programmed. Or I think maybe it's the other way around. And it's not necessary with MFX decoders. So other than being the lower voltage, you don't need to have that programming bit that reprograms a programmable decoder, an FX decoder. It's not necessary on the MFX because the MFX already has its individual index to tell you which one is being programmed. There was a question, and again, I don't think I answered it the first time. And maybe Rick, you can help respond to that about the M83 and M84. I cannot imagine that each contact can be used individually. So red on a green on at the same time. Yes, that the thing is, the newer ones can actually be configured so that you, rather than having sort of 4 switching or swapping outputs, you can actually set it up to you have 8. But essentially, like an M84, when you reconfigure it to have 8 outputs, rather than being a red to green sort of switch in your mind, you need to think of it as an on-off switch.
For each one.
Yeah, you can turn that output on or you can turn it off. So it is something that you can look in one of our newsletters that kind of explains how that works in more depth. That might help. We do have a couple of questions here. Is there an email you can ask questions as a club member? I am outside the USA. Okay, so Amir, the club, if you're an insider club member, that's a different entity than the digital club. You can send us emails regardless because there's no fee for the digital club. Look under clubs, and it's specifically the digital club link, or if you send us an email at digital@marklin.com, we actually have the link to join the club at the bottom of our emails.
Yeah, and you cut out for a split second there. You have to go to the Marklin USA site, so marklin.com, and then you go to clubs and digital club, and there you can sign up electronically for the digital club. And anyone that signs up with the Marklin Insider Club, I believe through the US site, is automatically enrolled into the digital club. So there you have it.
All right. Can I run a Marklin local? Okay, yeah. Sorry, I missed that question. Can you run Marklin over Lightung on Bachmann tracks? Yes, again, that is no, you cannot actually run even the pantograph, Marklin pantograph on
No.
Bachmann tracks. And let me give you a better explanation of that because I know the text was probably a little weird. When you have a 2-rail track, you're basically dealing with a positive and negative rail, right? And the way a 3-rail system works is it has the 3 rails. That third rail is basically equivalent of, what is it, the negative? So you have 2 positives on the outside on a 3-rail system and a negative on the inside. What happens is if you put a 3-rail train on the 2-rail track, you're basically sending a surge of current through the decoder that's going to be unregulated, and it's going to burn up your decoder. It's going to burn up your Marklin train. Well, so even with the overhead, you're still connecting the 2 wheels to the 2 hot rails on your 2-rail track. So do not ever put a 3-rail train on a 2-rail track.
Not to mention the flanges are different for American, and won't go over the turnouts and all that good stuff. Basically, you'll short your controller because they're uninsulated axles.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Then I think that about
We're
does
there.
it for us. Once
we
again,
made it.
great. Thanks for all sort of the rush of questions. Hopefully, you guys learned something. You found value. You found humor
In the first 20 minutes
in the
of our
first 20 minutes.
presentation.
Yeah, it was a really short instruction set. We'll try to keep mind of all the sort of the future topics that you guys would like us to refer to. And our next, I think we did have a date for our next webinar.
Yes, we do. I have it here.
Was that the 14th?
April 14th.
And I think the tentative topic, oh God, I remember I dread it.
Then don't say it. Because we can change it if you don't say it.
Yeah, it had something to do with programming stuff. And it's
We're tired
we
of
don't know
that.
if you guys like to program.
Yeah. So
Okay. Great. I think that's it. I'm sort of getting some notes here that I can't really make heads or tails of. So forgive us for not really answering those. Email us again. Thanks for joining us from the Netherlands. That's VT601 on YouTube. Can you send the most current versions of the MS2 and the CS3 units? I hope you're referring to the software version. We're not
software
sending
version
you
for the mobile station is 3.55, then a 3.112, so it's 3.121 now. And that's only available through a Central Station 2 at the moment. And the CS3, actually, I'm going to have to look. CS3.
Also, we had a visitor from Norway. Thank you, Per. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
CS3 is 2.2.05 in parentheses. So there you have it. 3.121 and 2. What did I say? 2.2.05.
C track, there's a question. C rail is a 2-rail track. Well, it depends. C rail track from Trix is 2-rail. C rail track from Marklin is 3-rail.
There you go.
So,
and they haven't released the update for the mobile station into the CS3 yet that we know of. We don't know why. We don't get that information. We just pass it along. I'm sure it's coming soon, probably in the next update for the Central Station 3. We haven't had a CS3 update in a few months. They may do a minor one. I have to double check to see if there's a minor update. But right now you're stuck with updates. I think mostly the updates for the mobile station were to use when you're using a mobile station with a CS2. That's why it kind of came out through that portal. I can't really give you an answer.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that it's just funny that it needs to retro if you do the update on a CS2 and then
you plug it in a CS3 and it puts you back. And the next question is when you check in settings, it will tell you if it's not current. Well, I don't know what you're referring to, a mobile station or a central station or a CS2 or a CS3, and I'll wait for that.
CS3 will only notify you if there's an update available if you have it connected to your network
and if you have it selected to do so.
No, CS3.
Yeah, you can have it. You can
disable that. Yeah, I wasn't aware you could disable that. Yeah. All right. We got also Frederico is actually in Peru. So thank you, Federico, for joining us. You guys are just pandering for call outs. So shout out to you guys.
Yeah. Everybody not in the U.S.
Definitely appreciate you guys from coming in and signing in. But yeah, great. Thanks for joining us in. That pretty much ends our session for
Yeah.
today. Hopefully see you guys next month.
Yeah. And send us emails with questions if we didn't cover them today. So,
All right.
all
Take
right.
care. So
Bye,
long,
everyone.
folks. Good seeing y'all. Bye.